I'm Mustafa Janadu in the capital of the Empire, DC. That's Kunle Williams in the capital of disaster, Lagos, Nigeria, where Tinubu continues to thrive. So this is episode 5 of Political Animals. We give you an analytical and a cynical view. I'm the more cynical one in DC, and Kunle is the one who's slightly hopeful but still pissed off. Anyway, so let's get started. So the troubles continue in Palestine. I think it's about 38 people killed or in the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. There was a school was hit, petrol station was hit, tents were hit. These are areas where civilians are. When Israel warned that I think it's Kaz Yunus was going to be attacked, they said we're going to have a super attack. The name of the attack, they use a biblical name, the Great Gideon's Revenge, something about the Great Gideon Chariot, Operation Gideon's Chariot. Sounds like some bullshit. You're killing human beings and you're naming it Gideon's Chariot. Gideon is some biblical Jewish character. But anyway, they said that people should clear because this will be an unprecedented attack. Basically, they're trying to clear the land and take it so that they can use it for Israeli people. That's my view. That's what they're doing. In line with Trump's view also of starving people to death, killing them, genocide, clear the area and give more land to Israel, make Israel have more land mass and make it a more formidable threat in the Middle East. What do you think, Kunle?
Yes, the strikes and the attacks today were very specific. They also attacked Al Ali Hospital, killing several Palestinians and journalists there as well. And they claim that
how many journalists killed? About 10 journalists killed today?
I think about 4 that I saw. The claim is that they have the right to attack hospitals because Hamas is operating from tunnels under there. Attacking hospitals in wartime is a war crime, and they sought to justify their war crime with these reports, and they feel that they will not have to account for them. And we've seen their attempts to make up stories about tunnels and all of that, yet they continue to bomb hospitals. Germany has finally come abroad, along with Canada, France, and the United Kingdom, to start at least condemning them in public, condemning Israel's conduct in public. But the condemnation is not strong enough. They need to first withhold arms, weapons, and funding for weapons that they've been giving, and then they need to start boycotting Israel. You don't need to militarize anything. If it was enough for South Africa, it should be enough for Israel to ostracize them economically until they start behaving like human beings again. Mm-hmm. And then they account for their sins.
They put sanctions on Russia. Whether you agree with the Russia-Ukrainian war, they put sanctions on Russia and took billions of them dollars of money and tried to destroy the Russian economy. If they can do that for a war in which Russia is not killing civilians, I don't think even up to 10,000 civilians, if that many have been killed in the war. Russia's not attacking civilians. If they can do that against Russia, why aren't they doing it against Israel? What do you think is the answer, Kunle?
Well, the attack there was basically a Zionist attack on Russia. You know, Russia has been the main force in fighting. It's all a part of a bigger picture. Russia has been the force in fighting neo-colonialism and imperialism and white supremacy by arming the global South and enabling the global South to fight, whilst China has enabled the global South to feed itself better and to sustain itself better. So they pose 2 major risks to the Western hegemony and the G7 and America. Hence the reason for the problems that are going on right there with Russia.
Yeah, but not only that, you have to remember that, like you said, Russia is part of a different world order, but Israel is part of their world order. Same thing like when the U.S., when blacks weren't allowed to vote and they were getting killed, that's a Western world order, and white people are not going to be motivated to stop it. So Israel is actually part of the Western world order, so they're not going to say anything when they're not going to put sanctions on Israel because that's like putting sanctions on themselves. It's part of their system. AIPAC controls everything. If this had been in Syria, when Syria had persecution of its people, supposedly by Assad, they put sanctions on Syria. They want to put sanctions on Iran, but they never want to put sanctions on any of their own people. So the West has a double standard, basically. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, it comes down to money. And what I've now actually found out is that I used to think, the British press, blah, 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 is under Ofcom and they're more reliable than CNN. But I actually found out that the British government, the British press, the British media is actually more under control by Israel than America is. America even has some resistance. I don't think the UK has any resistance to it at all at any level.
Because their economy is a sitting duck. Their economy
is basically based on that wealth, and then the Zionist project likes to use Orthodox Jews as a human shield. They'll do something bad, and then they're hoping that the Orthodox Jews who actually oppose them get attacked, so that they can say, look, it's anti-Semitism against all of us. We need to ban. It's like a bad brother. There are two brothers. One is good, one is bad. And the bad one goes around causing mayhem, trying to get the two of them into trouble. That's how, that's the problem.
And actually, more Orthodox Jews are also becoming very anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
And by Semitic, I mean anti-Arabic. They're anti-Arabic.
So the Orthodox Jewish side, since we can't fight them, we don't have the money, we don't have the weapons to fight them, we have to stand with those who have the power, who are in a position to do the right thing, which are the Orthodox Jews. They are the ones that have to take the fight. I don't think there's anybody else that has the power or the money or the ability to take the fight to Zionists apart from the Orthodox Jews. So they need to sort that side out and let the world join them to stop them. And boycotting and changing the way that people think, the way that people are educated to hate, to want to exterminate, to see people as not human beings. They need to remove this kind of education from their system because it's poisoning their generations and it's turning the world against them.
No, we've seen how it goes. We saw it in the U.S. in the 1950s and 1940s and 1930s. White people would kill black people and it would be a picnic. Young white girls in dresses with blonde hair and pigtails would be looking at the dead body of a black person smiling, and then they would send greeting cards to their families. So that's how Israel has become. So it's easy for human beings. We saw it in Nigeria too after the Civil War, where you say, "Oh, Yorubas hate Igbos," or "Igbos hate Northerners." It's very easy to program humans into thinking other humans are animals. The Germans did it to the Jews. Still, black people are seen as animals all over the world. So what you have now is the miseducation of people in Israel through the CIA and since this whole project began in, what was it, 1940s or late 1940s? Since this project they've been programmed to think that Arabic people are animals. And then they'll say it's because they're evil. No, whites thought that blacks were animals in America and in Europe, blacks didn't do anything to them. So they can't say that.
That's why they get angry, because they see accountability as persecution. Like I said before, they see equality as a threat. They see accountability as a persecution. And any protest of any sort, in any form, be it verbal, physical, or whatever, is being treated as an assault. And they're using it to instill fear into anyone that tries to speak out against what's going on. And what has now happened is that America and Israel have found themselves in the position of North Korea, because Western governments are beginning to turn on them, and they begin to turn on them as a state. Yeah. I don't know how far the West will stop, because I know they are also under control
with this latest, which is so horrendous, weaponizing starvation, starving kids who are dying, and then they come in and they give them American aid. They give them a small bag of grains. It's so small that you couldn't make more than a cake, not even a loaf of bread off of it. Not even a loaf of bread, maybe a small cupcake. They give them that small. And then when they're coming there, they're getting shot in the head and chest. This is going all over the world. And at a certain point, it's going to reach a critical mass where people are going to look and say, okay, who's involved in this? Okay, Trump's involved, Biden was involved, British, and the European leaders are afraid, because the European citizenry will rise up eventually when these images start coming out. So
that's the danger with Europe.
Yeah, so Europe is getting edgy, because what Israel is doing is not even necessary if you want to dominate a group of people. They can just dominate them the way they dominate black people as slaves. You keep them, but you keep them under your thumb. But what they're doing is trying to wipe them off the face of the earth, which is a little bit too much for even psychopaths to stomach, if you get what I'm trying to say. So because what is happening is Israel is a monster that the West created, which is going beyond what the West wanted to do. It's just like Hitler.
Yeah. So rigging Western elections is very difficult.
Do you know when France and Germany and who was the other country that spoke out and said there's going to be consequences for this? When they said there's going to be consequences for this, Netanyahu said that they're supporting terrorism. They're giving a gift to Hamas by speaking out by threatening sanctions on Israel. Do you get my point? Yeah. So Netanyahu, to me, he's just as bad as Hitler. Just as bad as Hitler. What do you think?
He's worse because Hitler tried to hide his crimes. They're showing them off on social media. At least Hitler was ashamed. He didn't want them to find out, and he denied that anything ever happened. They're trying to justify it.
And people see this. And this is why I say America collectively and Europe collectively are also Nazis. And the reason I say so is because they're not taking any action. Here's a theory. Kunle, if Russia was doing what Israel is doing now, if Russia was doing that to Germany now, don't you think that by now the whole world, a crusade of white people would be in Germany now defending Russia? You get my point? No, in Germany defending Germany. In Germany, or if this was happening, let's say Russia was doing this to Britain. Let's say they went to Britain and annexed it and started killing little white British girls, shooting them in the head. Every white person, even white people in America, will say, "I'm going to give me a plane, going to give me a cross, going to give me a gun, and I'm going to fight for those young children in Britain." But when they see it in Palestine, they say, "Oh, what's happened to them is bad, but that's just life. We just have to deal with it." You get my point?
It's the value of life. That's why.
So it just goes back to white supremacy.
If you look like me and you have you look more like me.
Well, that's what they said. They said, why are Americans fighting so hard for Ukraine, but they didn't fight for other parts of the world? And the woman said it's because these are white Christians who look like us. They have the same religion as us, and they look like us. That's what it boils down to. And this is why I'm saying South Africa was the only country that took Israel to the court of, although I think it was futile, it didn't serve any purpose, Well,
I think Ukraine was more tactical and militaristic reasons rather than ideological reasons. Israel is more of an ideological reason, though. But it's also tactical and strategic to get a foothold in oil.
If any country tries to liberate Palestine, they're going to have the problem of the U.S. and Israel's nuclear weapons. So that's another problem. So the U.S., and I'm going to say this, the US, whoever the president is, Biden or Trump, is also just as evil as Netanyahu, because all they have to do is cut the funding, and they don't.
Yes,
so
that's what the weakness of American politics is that the cost of doing it means that only the Zionist lobbies are able to dominate and use money to override.
Yeah, but the U.S. could override the Zionist. The U.S. could override the Zionist lobbyists too if it wanted to, because there's money from other places too. There's money from
Western Europe. In Western Europe, the leaders are more fearful because if you do raise a government that they don't like, the people are able to stand up and riot and remove them. So it's a bit harder for them to control the line that they're riding.
Out of every continent, Europe is the biggest one that's in trouble, which is where we're going to segue. They're in big trouble because they have the most to lose out of all of this. Europe had a free-flowing, almost zero, they were paying pennies for Russian gas. And now they're under the thumb of America even more. We don't even realize America benefited from World War II because that was the transition of America becoming the superpower. Because after World War II, after World War II, Britain and America were supposed to say, we're going to build a currency, a Western currency. And America said, no, it's going to be the dollar. Now we're the men. And we all know that American banking helped to build the Nazis. George Bush's family was involved in that. American banking helped build the Nazis. So my argument is that the U.S. used the Nazis. Nazism started in the U.S. actually with eugenics. The U.S. built the Nazis to destabilize Western Europe and to make them come in as the rescue. The way that the mafia does. The mafia will send people to beat you up. Then they'll come and say, pay us protection to stop you. Then after World War II, the U.S. brought the Germans. I didn't know this until lately. They brought the Germans to build their military, their spaceship, and their educational system after World War II. Because before that, the U.S. was a myopic country, sort of an experience. It didn't have
the German scientists.
The German scientists, they built everything in America, not just their military, their medical technology, everything. So where the U.S. is, and so the U.S. started the Ukraine-Russian war to get to separate Russia from Europe and the benefits that come, so that now Europe is dependent on American aid, military aid, and also they're dependent on American gas, which is 10 times more expensive than Russian gas. So what the Europeans don't realize is that America is slowly destroying Europe. And then when it's fully destroyed, they say, okay, you can come to America and build it up. That's what's happening. Last thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's basically the blueprint for the West. Destroy as much of the global South and the rest of the world as possible, turn it into a ruin, and take the best of what is left from them, be it human resources or material, and make our place a haven and their place a hell.
Yeah, and we all
That's
know
why
that
they can't
America.
sustain that model.
You know what they called America in the early days? New England. So America is the New Europe because America has more the land space, which belongs to the Indians, has more resources. So what you're looking at in America is actually the extension of Europe. So now what you're looking at with Europe there is just their little vassal. It's like not their stepchildren, their small cousins. So Europe, but America is Europe. Everything that Europe is doing now is based on American funding. So now we can segue